NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte recently turned heads in Brussels when he told MEPs that national governments should consider cuts to their welfare spending to bolster their military budgets. It comes off the back of governments such as Finland suggesting that protections should be enshrined in the Constitution. My name is Angela Scoogens, this is TVP World, and I'm joined here in the Brussels studio by Maria Martisiute. She is a defence analyst from the European Policy Centre think tank here in Brussels, and she is going to explain whether governments should bite the bullet and get serious on this kind of military thinking. Hi, Maria.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So what are your thoughts with Mark Rutte's comments? Are they a bit on the nose, or is this the direction that governments should be going in terms of military spending?
My view of Mark Rutte's statements is that indeed security and defence is an investment in countries' security, in countries' growth and jobs agenda. And what he's really trying to say is that we haven't prioritised defence and military to the extent that we should have. So he's calling for a shift in mindset, he's calling for a shift in priorities. And of course what that means is that we need to reprioritise, also to say identify priorities within priorities, which eventually mean perhaps cutting in one policy area in order to boost another, in order to have a more balanced approach overall.
But I imagine that if a government were to roll this out, there could be opposition from people. You know, they don't want cuts to their pensions, they don't want cuts to those social programs. How do you convince them that this is a worthwhile investment?
Well, every country will have to look at and make national decisions which areas would have to be cut or, you know, slightly more balanced, so to say. So I think it's important to have a conversation with the public, which we're not really seeing so much in the West. You know, citizens are rational beings. They do understand what can be at stake, what is at risk, what it might cost and why. And that security is, you know, our right, but also our duty. And in fact, citizens play a very vital role in defending institutions, in ensuring the continuity of essential services during any kind of, you know, emergency, crisis or war. So I think it's important to have that dialogue with the citizens so they don't feel left out, but they're actually vital actors in the debate and in this important shift towards bolstering our defence spending.
Is there anywhere where this conversation is occurring and it's, you know, going well, that the dialogue is happening and the people and the citizens understand?
Absolutely. And, you know, first of all, it's frontline countries like the Baltic states, like Poland, Scandinavian countries who, I mean, the society, partly because of history, partly because of identity and geographical proximity to Russia, have good understanding of what the threats are and what the war in Ukraine means and where we are potentially heading longer term. So I would encourage, you know, leaders who are perhaps slightly further away from this region, but nonetheless are equally affected by the threats we're facing, not least hybrid threats as well, to, you know, learn perhaps from the Baltic Nordic region, but also tailor the narrative to their populations, because security is an investment not just in terms of, you know, defense of state and institutions and citizens. It's an investment in our economy, an investment in growth and jobs, because its defense sector is a very significant sector in terms of contributing to the country's GDP.
What do you make of this report that has come out of Finland this week that, you know, it argues that civilians have a constitutional right to security but also a duty to act? Do you think that Helsinki is stoking paranoia with these kinds of statements, or what's your take on it?
I think Helsinki is being realistic and is fast adapting to the geopolitical developments on the ground. We are facing, and EU and NATO have been facing for a long time, crisis and major war in and around their territory. So that's, of course, war in Ukraine, but also hybrid attacks, disinformation, weaponization of migrants, and the list goes on. And we are struggling to deter and to prevent these attacks. So it's Finland is known for its culture of preparedness that incorporates government, but also the society at large. And I fully identify with treatment of civil preparedness and security as a right and as a duty, a right, because citizens do have a right to know, first of all, how to prepare. They need to be informed. They deserve that explanation and debate. And everyone is entitled to knowing what it takes, what tools to use for one's survival during emergency, crisis and war. But also it's a duty. Citizens are not only beneficiaries of security, we are vital contributors to security, and everyone can play a role in our households, in our cities, in our countries, in our local communities. So it's from this standpoint that I commend Finland's very much forward-looking approach, and I hope that the EU, NATO and countries in Europe at large would look up to it and take it on board.
Do we have any indication that NATO or other countries are kind of looking at the Finnish model and want to mimic it?
Absolutely, that is happening as we speak.
Okay.
It is recognized civil preparedness and resilience culture is recognized as, as the right model coming from Finland and from Sweden, and total defense concept from the Baltic states as well. So indeed, countries like Germany, like the Netherlands, are looking up and trying to draw lessons and adapt to their own national contexts.
There was something in that report that I thought was interesting. It mentioned that citizens have a duty to act, and is the inference there that they should go to the battlefield and they should be willing and able to be conscripted, or what do they mean by duty to act? Does it manifest in other ways?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, it's situational awareness, sharing information. Then, the society, the institutions and the country has to draw on societal readiness to respond to emergency and crisis. Because what happens is you can draw on engineers if there is a need to, for example, fix railway tracks or national grid. You need to rely on volunteers for evacuations, on first aid support. So the society needs to come all together. Plus, everyone should, as Finland outlines, be ready for 72 hours to be able to manage without key essential services such as heat or food or electricity. So the society can play a major role at individual level, at personal level, individual level, but also within our local communities. And this has to be better explained in the West to the citizens in a not in a kind of hawkish, alarmist way, but it's a shared responsibility indeed.
Yeah. When you mentioned the 72 hours, what threat are they impending?
So this could be a blackout, it could be a combination of cyber military threats. And in fact, to be prepared for the unexpected, because at that level of disruption, indeed it would alleviate the pressures on the institution and on the governments to respond to crisis if society is calm, if society is prepared, and if messages are being communicated, what sort of actions should be taken or avoided at that time.
And how do you change a country? How do you move it from not having this culture of preparedness to being totally prepared? Because I'm assuming if a government just comes out and says that we need to be more prepared, they're not. They perhaps may not listen. How do you do it? Do you do it from the classroom, or how does that occur?
First of all, I think it requires an open, honest, frank conversation in a proactive manner with the citizens, calm conversation, to just, explain what the situation is and what is required, what more is needed to ensure the security of a country or of a city, of Europe. And a culture of preparedness is a process. Even Finnish would tell you that it is a continuum, that you keep learning and adapting. But I think a good starting point is indeed to engage with the citizens and to showcase examples that are working. In case of Scandinavia or the Baltic states, to have exchange of best practices, conversations, lessons learned, because on the 29th of December, I would like to reiterate that NATO warned that one of those hybrid attacks from Russia will actually cause substantial casualties and a very substantial economic damage. So this, whether you are in Poland, but or Belgium, you are exposed to that risk as we speak.
And do you mention Poland because Poland is the biggest spender of GDP on military and Belgium is perhaps not? Is that why you use those two countries in that way?
Yes, well, I just wanted to take an example from the eastern flank more and from the western.
I see.
But also Poland indeed is a leader in terms of spending of its GDP, in terms of NATO's guideline. And Poland is also very much aware of the risks and threats facing Poland and Europe at large. And people are also involved in potentially responding and acting in that situation.
In a recent opinion piece for the European Policy Centre, you mentioned that a range of European countries, including Poland, estimate that a war with Russia could commence between 2027 and 2029. What do you think that they base this estimation on?
On intelligence. These are indeed national security authorities that have come forward, and I commend them coming forward because indeed we should be prepared, we should be talking about this rather than avoiding or trying to, put it under the carpet. And, NATO also encouraged to move to a wartime mindset. So did Kubilis, the European Commissioner for Defence and Space. So what is needed now is indeed to strengthen that conversation at European level, at NATO level, at also national level and local level. Because it's not about scaring people, it's about engaging and, conversing and having a dialogue on difficult issues.
And just to clarify, this threat that Poland sees in 2027, 2029, do you think that it's Russia, that they're estimating that Russia is the threat that could come to their doorstep?
Correct. Yeah. That's correct.
Yeah. And if Russia did attack or there was some kind of aggression, would they be prepared to defend themselves?
Yes, that's what's happening at the moment, and that has been happening already for some time, in particular since Russia's full-scale war of aggression against Ukraine in 2022. A lot of money is being poured into bolstering and ramping up national and European defense industries, in innovating and modernizing our weapons, in stockpiling different capabilities and supporting Ukraine as well, because let's be honest, Ukraine is shielding us for the moment from the horrors of war. So that is actually our first line of defense, if I can put it this way. But at the same time, if we look at Russia, Russia is, creating dangerous alliances around the world with North Korea, with China, with Iran, expanding now a strategic relationship with Iran, actually. And they are, according to European Commission for Defence and Space, Russia is able to produce in 6 months what, for example, Germany has in its stocks. So indeed, we need to urgently ramp up our capabilities. But hand in hand with that, we need to take society along with us, because it's a vital resource. And it's the societies that we need to rely on, but also protect too.
And we know that the Defence Commissioner will be handing out his white paper on defence mid-March. This is the reports that I've seen. So we'll wait and see how engaged the public is and how much they can connect with what he's saying and what needs to be done. But thank you so much for talking to us, Maria.
My pleasure, thank you.
And thank you so much for watching. My name is Angela Scoogens. This is TVP World. Make sure that you stick around as there's more news, commentary and analysis coming up. See you next time.